Hey friends, today you are going to be working on part of your personal narrative. You started this last week with Mrs. Nestor in your writing handbook. It was talking about the prompt, one of the hardest things you ever did was. And whenever you worked on it with Mrs. Nestor, she talked about learning to read and how learning to read is very hard to do. So what you're going to do today is you're going to read through the first few slides and you are going to write your introduction and kind of starting to order your events in your personal narrative. So if you look at the first slide here, slide 2, it says there are parts of a personal narrative. So for this, you want to focus on that small moment in your life. So in the example, it was about learning to read. So whatever your example is that you want to work on, you're going to try to come up with that. You want to write it the same way you would if you told it to someone. So that talks about using talking about I did this, I did that, this is how I felt. You want to try and catch them with your lead. So having a catchy lead, drawing that reader in. You want to use details to tell who, what, where, and how. So what the story was about. Stories like this are going to have a beginning, middle, and end. You really want to describe the people in your story, the places, the things, any detail will help draw the reader in. You want to use order words, which you'll read a little bit about or hear a little bit about later, like first, next, and last. This just helps move the reader through the story. You really want to focus on spelling and capitalization. Remember, those do matter. And reread it. Would it make sense to a stranger? So if someone else heard this, would it make sense to them? So on slide 3, what you're going to do is you're going to write your introduction. So the hardest thing I ever did was, and then all you have to do is double click here and you can type in, erase type here, and you can type that in. Now, when you did it with Mrs. Nestor, you did about learning to read. I want you to try and come up with something else. So for me, my example would be the hardest thing I ever did was learn to drive. That is something that took months and months and months to learn. You have not had that experience yet, so you cannot use that example, but I would say the hardest thing I ever did was learn to drive. So you'll type that in on this slide. Then for today, you're also going to go to slide 4, and this is just reading over some time order words. So it talks about before, first, next, sometimes, and last. And you can use those words, or they give you other suggestions. So earlier, once, previously, prior to that, yesterday. And then instead of using first, you could say before, at first, to begin, starting with, and so on for next, sometimes, and last. These are just other ideas to help improve your writing and make it not so basic with using before, first, next, sometimes, last. So just read through some of those and see if any of them would work in your story. So the last slide you want to look at today is slide 5. So you want to start to tell the events in order using those time order words. So they give you first, and then you can type, next, and then you can type, after that, and then you can type. So for mine, I could say first, I had to get behind the wheel even though I was so nervous. Next, I went around a parking lot with my mom, and it was the first time that I was actually driving on my own without any help. After that, I practiced and practiced and practiced, and finally I went to go and take my driver's test. So you're just kind of saying in what order did it happen? This is where we are going to stop for today. This is just starting your story, and then we will look at slides 6 through 9 tomorrow and on Wednesday. So today you're just focusing on slides 2, 3, 4, and 5.